talk to Marie and she can figure out the logistics of doing that.
Okay.
So Scarlett or Greta.
Okay, we're gonna see what happens here and try to get it to go. Yeah, hit share. Try application. I say look grayed out. Okay. Oh, you may need to make us a presenter in the WebEx.
Marie?
Yes.
Yeah, it would be Greta White.
Okay, the ball's going to your court, Greta.
There she is.
Excellent.
Okay.
And it's working.
Okay, do you all see a record of decision up there, our PowerPoint slides?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Well, good evening. My name is Greta White. I'm with the Department of Environmental Conservation. I will ask the rest of my colleagues here to introduce themselves as well.
Good evening. My name is Dan Eaton, and I'm the section supervisor that Greta works in.
My name is Doug McNeil. I was the prior project manager for the site. Greta just took it over for me within the last year. So I'm here to answer any questions.
And is the health department audio, can you hear the health department if they speak?
I just got access to unmute myself. This is Scarlett McLaughlin. I'm the region chief for the Region 2, which is New York City area, and collectively with BTEX in the investigation and remediation of hazardous waste sites and brownfield cleanup sites, and maybe.
That view. And is Stephanie audible?
Doesn't Can we get her to unmute herself, because she would be answering health-related questions.
Hey, did I figure it out this time?
Hear ya.
Okay. Yep, I'm here. My name is Stephanie Sommer. I'm the DOH project manager for this site.
Okay. I think we have conquered the technical connection, and we're ready to start.
Great.
Okay, so again, thank you for asking us to be here tonight. You wanted to discuss the NASA work site, which is located at Kent Avenue and Clymer Street and makes up the northeast corner of the Brooklyn Navy Yard Industrial Complex. Tonight we'll be summarizing the environmental findings at the site, its site status, and the process of what comes next. So as far as our agenda, we'll first review what MGP or manufactured gas plant is in general. Then we'll go into the history of the NASA Works MGP specifically. We'll review what investigations have uncovered and what the plan is moving forward. And then we will answer any of your questions you might have. We ask that you please mute your presentation. We will be pausing between topics to answer any questions on manufactured gas plants in general, and then we'll open it up at the end again for further questions. But you can also always post a question into the chat, which you should be able to find at the lower right-hand corner of your screen, the little question bubble there, or go into the Q&A and type something in and make sure you hit the submit button so we'll see it and we'll answer those as we proceed. First, we'd like to go into what a manufactured gas plant is in general, or an MGP site. Most MGPs began operation in the mid-1800s by producing gas by baking coal. The last ones closed in the 1960s, having been replaced by natural gas processes. Here we see a theoretical mock-up of a manufactured gas plant or works facility on the left, with the distribution holder on the right. So coal would come into the facility here, and we see like the A-B slot. It would be heated in the retorts in the C and D area. As the coal burned off, it would off-gas volatile constituents, which would be collected and cooled and purified prior to being piped out into the holders or directly out into the surrounding areas for use. And we often see spills or leaks which could have occurred during the processing facility, along the pipelines, or at the holder sites.
Fine, I'm just going to reach over you for a second. Okay, fine.
The primary waste of the manufactured gas plant process is known as coal tar, which would condense out of the gas at various stages during production, purification, and distribution. The properties of that coal tar can vary from site to site, but it's typically an oily, viscous, or dense liquid that does not readily mix well with water. Coal tar is a mixture of several organic compounds, and the mixture isn't always exactly the same, again, which leads to that variation from site to site. But the compounds that make it up fall into two groups, which are BTEX compounds and PAH compounds. So BTEX, what do we mean by that? It's for volatile hydrocarbons, which are benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene. It's much easier to say BTEX though, so we'll go with that. These compounds are lighter than water and tend to form sheens on the surface of the water. They're more easily dissolved in the water than the PAHs, but they're still more likely to form sheens than to dissolve. They'll tend to biodegrade, and they're found in most liquid petroleum byproducts, such as gasoline and bonding agents. But research and our data has shown that when these BTEX compounds are bound up with coal tar, they tend to sink with the coal tar. PAHs, or polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, are another byproduct of the burning and heating process from the manufactured gas plants. They are semi-volatile compounds, meaning that they are less likely to off-gas than a volatile compound. They're denser than water. They're not easily dissolved and transported by water. They're not readily broken down in the environment, and they're typically found in asphalt, grilled meats, and rubber. And at this time, if you have any questions you'd like to ask about MGP processes in general or these compounds, I'd be happy to answer any of those questions at the moment. We don't see any in the chat. I do hear some people on the line, but not any questions, so I'll move on. So now we'll get into the Nassau Works MGP site more specifically. It began operation in 1873 and ceased operations prior to 1935. The initial order of consent between the department and the city was executed in 1996, and that order consisted of a 13-acre parcel of the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which included this former manufactured gas plant facility. The site characterization began in 1997, followed by remedial investigation beginning in 2004. The remedial investigation looked into the nature and extent of the contaminants. So the nature meaning what are the contaminants, and the extent meaning where are those contaminants. The original order was replaced by two orders of consent in 2006, which split the MGP works from the remainder of the site, which formed just the 3.71-acre parcel that the site is today. The department recognizes that the Brooklyn Navy Yard is a single entity managed on their end. However, the department separates sites by responsible party and waste profiles, thus the splitting of the site in 2006. The other portion of the site has maintained the Superfund designation of Class 2 due to its waste profile, while this site went into the manufactured gas plant program as opposed to the Superfund program due to the MGP nature of the waste. And we'll take a look at a figure of the site. So first up here in the upper right-hand corner, we see the site as opposed to New York itself, and can see that it's down here by the city. The lower right-hand side is a bit zoomed in. We see we're along the East River here with the Brooklyn Navy Yard in general. And then our site right here is part of the northeast corner of the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Then the main figure here is further zoomed in on our site, which is highlighted in this red and blue kind of triangle square facility area. We have Kent Avenue is along the eastern border of the site here with Clymer Street right there. The Wallabout Channel and the Wallabout Channel Barge Basin to the west of the site. This darker blue area outlined here is the former site, that 13-acre site, and then again, we split that into 6. So besides the MGP operations, which I understand this figure is kind of hard to see, but that's what all these blue and green kind of dash marks inside the facility are showing, are the MGP former structures. We also see that the site's been used as an oil works facility with some oil and gas tanks on the northern property boundary. It's also been used as a salt storage facility by the New York Department of Sanitation. And this larger oval here was the salt storage shed, but the site currently is a vacant lot. Again, we have the Wallabout Channel here and the Barge Basin. The Barge Basin was originally dredged in 1942, which is after operations at the MGP ceased, which was again in 1935, meaning that the material that was there and had been potentially impacted by MGP operations would have been removed at that time. Remedial investigations that have taken place on site have included assessing surface water quality within the barge basin during fall of 2000. Results at that time indicated acute exceedances of the standards, criteria, and guidance values for a number of metals, however, no MGP-related compounds. And due to the tidal exchange and combined sewer overflow effluent inputs into the basin, surface water quality has not been more recently assessed in association with contamination from the Nassau Works MGP operations. Surficial sediments were also evaluated at that time and found to be related to the sewer overflow discharges, industrial discharges, and deposition in a stagnant water body, and were representative of urban background sediment concentrations. We understand that while in many circumstances the surface water and sediment data might be viewed as old, but deposition of the contaminants of concern with regard to the Nassau Works MGP occurred between 1873 and 1935. The channel was dredged in 1942 and again in 1961, and remaining contamination on site is deeper than the surface of the channel sediments. Thus, the department feels that the 2000 data provides a sufficient basis to select the remedy for the site. Subsurface sediments were investigated during summer of 2014, and those sediments range in thickness from 20 to more than 30 feet deep, and are deposits resulting from harbor sedimentation, industrial discharges, and sediment loading from ongoing sewer overflow discharges since the last maintenance dredging of the basin, which again occurred in 1961. Site-related coal tar impacts beneath the basin have been observed at depths greater than 20 feet below the mudline of the channel there.
I just said, are you, I'm seeing one of the first slides. Are you going through other slides, or are you still on that first one with the map?
No, we've advanced a number of slides. Are other people hung up? Because I'm watching on a different computer and seeing the presentation move along.
I'm seeing the presentation move along too.
Okay.
How about you, Willis?
This is
Which
Stephanie,
figure
and
are you
mine's
looking
been on
at?
the same slide for a while.
I think slide number 10. Is that what everyone's looking at?
Yes, that's what I see.
I see 10, but it's the essentially 3 maps. That's what I'm saying.
No, that's what-
Yeah,
correct.
That's where we've
Okay,
been.
all right. Just double checking. Sorry for the.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next figure right now. Now it should say slide 11. And we'll use this slide to review the soil and groundwater data we have now. So on the last slide, we had seen some of those fuel oil and gas tanks along the northern edge of the site. And that's where we see like these blue dots here, which indicate the observed petroleum-related impacts, while the orange dots are those showing the MGP-related impacts that we've seen, and the green dots are those locations with no observed physical impacts. This figure is representing the lateral extent of observed physical impacts, and again, those are observed impacts. It's likely that the former tar handling and gas production structures, so those that were in the middle of the site around here, represent the point at which the majority of the tar releases occurred during MGP operation. The tar then likely migrated down through permeable soil deposits like till and sand until it encountered less permeable units like till and clay, which then would have caused a portion of the tar volume to migrate laterally along the top of those less permeable layers. Groundwater at the site is approximately 5 feet below grade, so much of what we're seeing on this figure is indicating soil impacts that are below the water table. The majority of the impacts, in fact, are at depths greater than 30 feet, some around 100 feet below grade. And again, that water table is around 5 feet below grade, which is an important factor when determining which remedial options are the best fit. We see this kind of grayish area to the north of the site on the adjoining former Con Edison Kent Avenue generating station. During 2013-2014, there was an excavation of soils impacted in exceedance of the restricted residential SCOs, or soil cleanup objectives, above the water table there. A cover system and institutional controls, including an environmental easement and site management plan, are the remedy there. The remedy is considered complete and the site is in site management. And to the south and southeast, down around here of the site, were also numerous small area excavations in 2011-2012 of PCB and lead impacted soils to depths up to 3 feet below grade. And a cover system and institutional control, including an environmental easement, is the remedy there as well. So to kind of summarize those two figures that we just looked at, the Nassau Works MGP site is listed as a Class A site, which means that it's an active site. It says Superfund status there, but again, it's in the manufactured gas plant program. The size is 3.71 acres. It's typically a flat property with paved areas and no buildings currently exist. And most of the source level coal tar is between 30 and 100 feet deep. So with our remedial investigations having been wrapped up, we turn now to look at our remedial options. And this presents a couple of typical MGP-related remedial alternatives that we review. They include no action, excavation, solidification and containment, a cover system, treatment and recovery options, and institutional controls. We looked at all of these alternatives and pared them down to the 4 options that you see starred or in blue there. After determining that further excavation, which again would require depths over 100 feet deep, and dewatering efforts for those soils below 5 feet below grade, with off-site treatment, disposal, and solidification, containment, and barrier walls not being implementable at the scale required to effectively meet remedial action objectives. So next we take those 4 potential alternatives, which again were no action, a cover system, treatment and recovery, and institutional controls against the following 9 criteria. Those first 2 criteria are what we consider minimum threshold criteria, meaning that the chosen remedy must be protective of human health and the environment, and it must comply with our regulations, rules, and guidelines, or it cannot be selected. The remaining 7 criteria there are considered balancing criteria that we use to compare the remaining potential remedies. Here we have a figure showing our selected remedy. Again, our site's outlined here in the blue. We have Kent Avenue along the eastern border with Clymer Street the Wallabout Channel to the west, and the Barge Basin. The selected remedy for the Nassau Works site is shown. It includes an institutional control, which will cover the entire area of the site in blue, a cover system, which we see here in this kind of yellowy tan color, and coal tar recovery efforts, which are those blue blobs, if you will, with this little green guy up there. So the institutional control, which will be over the whole site, will be in the form of an environmental easement, and it'll notify future owners of the allowed land use and remaining contamination. It will require a site management plan, which will provide for long-term management of the remaining contamination, including plans for institutional and engineering controls, monitoring, operation and maintenance, and reporting to ensure that the site remedy remains protective. The cover system, which again is the yellowy tan kind of part. One currently is actually existing on site already, and it will be maintained. It will include, it may include concrete foundations, paved surface parking areas, sidewalks, or soil where the upper 1 foot of exposed surface soil meets applicable soil cleanup objectives for commercial use. And then the coal tar recovery efforts. In those areas, the wells will be installed and operated across zones of coal tar saturated lenses, and the locations will be coordinated with reasonably anticipated future site use to remove potentially mobile coal tar from the subsurface. So the exact number, depth, type, and spacing of those recovery wells aren't determined yet. They will be during the design phase. And if mobile recoverable tar is present at that time, then any recovered coal tar will be collected periodically from each of those wells via a vacuum truck, and the extracted liquids would be taken off-site for proper disposal. We have the two different colors in this one's blue and this one's blue, the larger part with a smaller greener area, and the blue areas are those locations where we anticipate intermediate depth coal tar recovery wells to be in place, and the green area will be deeper recovery wells. So when we say intermediate, it's about 50 feet below grade, and when we say deep, we mean about upwards of 100 feet below grade. And that's just based on the remedial investigation data collected to date. So these remedial alternatives together would prevent human exposure to the remaining contamination and contamination to the surface waters of the channel and the barge basin. So as again, a summary to that figure that we just saw, the selected remedy at the Nassau Works manufactured gas plant site will include institutional control in the form of the environmental easement, which will provide the legal authority for the work to be performed on site, a site management plan, which will provide the instructions, a cover system, which again could include concrete foundations, paved surface parking areas, sidewalks, or soil where the upper 1 foot of exposed surface soil meets applicable soil cleanup objectives for commercial use, and that will be protective of human health and the environment. And deep contamination will be addressed via those recovery wells.
Hold on a second. There was a question regarding what is an institutional control. So the first three bullets, or the first two bullets, are institutional controls, and may place restrictions on what can be done on the site. And so they're written controls that apply to the remediation, and then the cover system and the deep contamination would be recovery wells would be the engineering control, something physical on the site that the cover system will need to be maintained, not necessarily operated because it's just a cover system, but it needs to be inspected on some periodic basis, usually annually, and make sure that everything's in place. And then the recovery wells to collect deep contamination would need to be checked on a periodic basis, depending upon how much coal tar collects in the bottom of each well, and then the coal tar removed so that we're actually taking it away from the site and come back and check it again in the future to see what's accumulated and eventually a routine timeline on when the wells need to be pumped out and monitored is established. So that's, I hope that was probably a lot more than what you were asking for, but I hope that answers the question on institutional controls. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, essentially it's agencies or or the owner of the property and their consultants, or?
It has to be the owner of the property because it's an easement. And the easement would be signed by both the owner and the DEC. So it can't be, whatever controls are put in place can't be removed by one party or the other, or can't be changed by one party or the other without the second party's consent. So that differs from a deed restriction in that we can put a deed restriction on the property and the next owner that buys it can just remove the restriction. So the easement stays with the property in perpetuity and enables us to maintain that contact and control over what happens there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, so what comes next then?
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand the depth and in relationship to Wallabout channel and what, I guess, so one, the highest depth of contamination at the site on the land side was how much again?
Most of the contamination is observed between 30 and 100 feet below grade.
Okay, and you said that in the channel itself, it was 20 feet below the bottom of the inlet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so have you guys done any studies to look at the migration through the surface sediments within the water?
Well, we haven't seen it in those surface sediments of the channel. It's below, that 20 feet below the channel.
Right. But is there any migration? There's no migration happening at all from, I mean, the other question is about migration from the site itself through the shoreline.
So the coal tar does sink and it has sunk down to depth. And at depth, it tends to migrate laterally. And in this case, that would be toward the, cursor down there. I can't do that left-handed. From this area at depth underneath the Wallabout channel and over into this area where we found concentrations of coal tar that we believe can be captured in a recovery well.
Okay. And the reason why, I'm trying to understand why there's not any coal tar near the surface, which seems to be more common with other MGP sites.
I'm going to disagree with you and say I don't think it's more common with other sites, but remember that in the channel, this whole area was dredged or excavated twice since the MGP plant was shut down.
And real quick, this is Doug McNeil. The history of the property in general, there were several operations that occurred post the MGP's closure. So anything right at the surface that would have been hindering those operations would have been removed back in the 40s and 50s, like when the oil station was there. So that's why we don't really see anything in the top 10 or 15 feet. It's already been reworked and removed.
Okay. That makes sense. Was the dredging, do you know how deep the dredging was? Because 30 feet below the surface seems like quite a bit of sediment to have filled in. The reason I ask is that on Newtown Creek with the National Grid site, there's significant sediment contamination near the surface and through the ebullition, which is primarily caused by proximity to the CSO, which you have here. We have all these gases that are bringing the coal tar to the surface of the water. So I'm wondering, given that you have similar conditions here with proximity to a CSO and historic coal tar in the ground, why it's so much different. I guess if the issue is that there was such significant dredging in the 50s or 60s.
So the dredging was done for channel usage. So that 30 feet of sediment from the mud line to your contamination has probably always been there, or most of it has always been there. The coal tar that's down there did not come from the surface and gradually get buried. The coal tar that's under there came from the site at that depth and has moved laterally from the site. And at that depth, you don't get that gas ebullition up through the surface that you do in a situation like Newtown Creek, or we have a couple other sites where that happens closer to the surface. But because it's at this depth, you don't get that upward migration.
Okay.
Are we satisfied yet, or is there any?
Yeah,
I'm satisfied with that answer. Thanks.
Steve?
Yeah, so I just, how does this site compare to a former MGP site like 25 Kent or 50 Kent in terms of, I guess, the nature of the contamination, size of the contamination, et cetera? Was something, those were two sites that were fairly recent that I'm familiar with, so that's why.
50 Kent, the contamination was not as deep. The whole area there is all built on fill. I mean, it was wetland a long time ago, and it's been recovered and rebuilt out to where it is now. Made land, some would refer to it as. And the confining layer, the layer that it could sink to, was shallower than it is at this site. So the contamination that is there, at least at the 50 Kent parcel, so there's 3 parcels associated with that site. The parcel that's closest to Kent Avenue, an IRM has been conducted there, and we have recovery wells in the streets on either side and an in-situ stabilization in between the 2 streets. And we are working with National Grid to formulate an agreement for the investigation of the other 2 parcels.
Well, I guess the amount of contaminated product, I guess that was near the surface, was very extensive, and they ended up, they were tenting the site and had air filters, et cetera. And even with that, there were moments of, intense odor. And then across the street, 25 Kent, since I guess it was a private property, they didn't, utilize, I guess, as extensive mitigation techniques. So I don't know they were both being remediated roughly at the same time. So I know people like in McCarran Park who were downwind or nearby were hit with walls of, coal tar odor that was really, really intense. So I'm just wondering, at the Nassau site, can you anticipate having similar type of nuisance or potential hazard from, it sounds like it's just there potentially be some coal tar extraction, but as you're saying, there won't be any soil excavation. But in context of that, if you could, just kind of this is what we're dealing with, because the main thing I'm concerned with is there's there's two parks across the street. There's a residential building across the street, and then beyond it's a residential neighborhood. So I just, I'm worried about what they might deal with both as a nuisance and what will be an actual hazard in terms of inhaling the fumes from these contaminants.
Okay, so you're correct. There is no plan for excavation remedial work involving excavation at this site, in part because we'd have to dig down through 30 feet of not coal tar contaminated material to get to the source material that's down below it. So we won't, in doing an excavation, we do our best to control the odors, but it is somewhat of an uncontrolled environment as compared with a recovery well where we establish that there is or is not coal tar in the well, and if there is, we remove it, but we're removing it within a controlled system. And there's a chance there might be some minor odors, but not the same as if you were to open it up during an excavation. So when the point is reached, when extraction does begin from these wells, do you anticipate potentially having to tent the area or providing some sort of air filtering system or something that just, and also I want to, will there be air monitoring through that, through both the capping process and the well recovery? There would be air monitoring for operations during the remediation. I don't anticipate needing a tent structure for the recovery wells. Thank you, extraction wells. In relation to the way the migration, and again, you've talked about the depth of the location of the contamination, but what I can tell is that the plume, if you'll call it, has migrated under other existing buildings under the Navy Yard. So are those buildings are they having air monitoring? And during the well extraction process, is there potential for disturbance of the plume that would I don't know, create a more hazardous situation with vapor or otherwise? I don't know. Was there vapor testing on the BNYDC?
We have done some soil vapor testing under the buildings in the BNYDC. We did not see any evidence of soil vapor issues immediately beneath the buildings, which is actually expected. MGPs do not have a history of soil vapor issues associated with them because the vapors that come off of the material, by the time it's vaporized, and particularly at this depth, it gets actually bioremediated in the vapor form pretty quickly. You don't generally see it in the buildings. So we don't have any reason to believe it's in the buildings. And as far as the extraction wells go, the extraction wells are going to be placed outside of those buildings. And there shouldn't be any impact. When we do that extraction work, we traditionally do set up air monitors around the work area. And because frankly, the biggest protection is we got to protect the workers who are right over top of that. And we traditionally haven't seen any issue with those, so we don't anticipate an issue with that either.
Just to add on to that, there is supposed to be, when they're doing the work, there will be a community air monitoring plan in place, though.
Yes.
So, and that's there to ensure that this stuff is not migrating off-site at any levels that would impact the surrounding community. And just to add on, the recovery wells, extracting from a recovery well is very different from opening up excavation. You're going to have a lot, you're going to expose a lot more contamination when you're doing excavation and removing this stuff from a site as opposed to a recovery well.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
I don't want to be
Yeah,
hogging. Does anyone else have questions?
Well, I think Greta's very near the end, and she probably has answers, or maybe we're going to go over some of what we've just been talking about.
Yeah, so I think this is our last slide here pretty much. We just wanted to review kind of where we take it from here and what comes next. So we as in the Department of Environmental Conservation, have issued the record of decision in September last month. And you'll recall a moment ago, we were just talking about how those coal tar recovery wells, the number and location and design of those are going to be determined during a design phase. And that gets completed through a PDI or pre-design investigation. We're currently awaiting the pre-design investigation work plan from National Grid. We'll get it, we'll review it, make any revisions with National Grid before approval. The investigation will take place, followed by the report of outcome. And the outcome is going to provide us with the information if any further investigations required, or pilot testing or bench scale testing is needed. And then we'll move on to the remedial design, which will be submitted by National Grid to the department again for that review and revision and approval. And the remedial action will commence upon, as per the approved design. And throughout all of these steps we see here, again, that community air monitoring program will take place during all ground intrusive activities, to ensure that the site-related contaminants aren't migrating off-site. And the results of that community air monitoring will be available in the final engineering report and the site management plan for the site. And with that, if you have any further questions, we can answer those at this point.
I have a pretty basic question, which is, once the remediation is complete, will there be any restrictions for future uses on the site? Or is it open for anything?
So it'll be restricted to commercial use on site. And again, that environmental easement, which is one of our institutional controls, will tell any landowners what they are and are not allowed to do on site. It'll include restrictions like not using the groundwater.
Do we know what the owner's plans are for the site?
We do not. It kind of comes and goes, 20 years ago, you hear they're going to do something and then you don't hear about it again.
So is it actually part of the Navy Yard, or is there a developer that owns it?
It is part of the Navy Yard.
Okay, so it's city property.
It is, correct.
Okay.
It is only a separate parcel in relation to the environmental work that so we separate it administratively for DEC because it's a different parcel for us. But for the Brooklyn Navy Yard, it's all part of the same operating space.
But it's the northernmost parcel, isn't it? It's close next to
Correct.
residential.
Correct.
Yeah, it is a little bit separated from the rest of the Navy Yard because it sits on the other side of the basin
channel.
there. But it is officially still part of the Navy Yard, yes.
Okay. In creating the cover, will part of some of the surface soil need to be removed? And is there, any remnants or bits of the soil contamination that we might be worried that will be disturbed and get into the air?
No, so there currently is a site cover in place on site, and it will just be maintaining that site cover from here forward. If there were to be any development on site or anything, it would have to make sure that any final project had a 1-foot cover of soil.
It would have to comply with if something gets developed there, it will need to comply with the cover system that is prescribed in the ROD. A 1 foot of soil, or it could be asphalt, or it could be a concrete structure of some nature. It doesn't have to be soil. But if there's development, whatever changes they make would have to end up with this cover system staying in place.
Gotcha. Okay. And then just related to the community air monitoring, would monitors potentially be placed in the two parks, in Roberto Clemente Field and or Jacob's Ladder Playground and or the residential building across the street from the site?
We wouldn't place them
Typically
at those
for-
locations. We
Go ahead, Stephanie.
There.
Typically for community air monitoring plan, the air monitors are placed at the perimeter of the site because we want to make sure that that's not going off site. So we want to take those measurements before it even gets that far.
I have a question. It's Maria at the Community Board's office. What is the timeline for this work? What are we looking at in terms of how many months? When is it going to start? When is it expected to end?
Well, so that's part of the tricky question. Like I said, we're uncertain as of yet where and how many those recovery wells would need to be put in, and that's why we're doing a pre-design investigation. Currently, we're awaiting the work plan on that from National Grid, and until we have even the information from that investigation, we wouldn't be able to necessarily say how long it would take to install those wells, because we wouldn't know until then how many it would be and the access to getting them installed and everything like that.
There has to be some kind of an idea of like 2020, 2022, 2030. I mean, there has to be some idea as the length of this project when it is expected to start.
So usually when we move a project out of the remedial decision stage, which is where we're at now, usually we're looking at roughly around a year for the design and investigation work. And then after that, you've got contractor procurement, the actual work, and the follow-up reporting is going to be probably at least another year. So you're looking for at least probably 2 years until the work is complete.
And who's responsible for the cost? Would that be the Navy Yard and the city, or is the state helping with that?
It's National Grid actually is the responsible party.
Can we expect another rate increase soon, I guess?
Gosh, I hope not.
Well, everybody's at home now using all their internet and their lights at home instead of an office, so they need to, they've got more usage.
Trina, you're muted. Were you trying to say something?
What is it that ties National Grid to it? Why is National Grid the responsible party?
They ended up either purchasing or inheriting the original company that operated the manufactured gas plant.
They are a corporate successor to the original gas plant operator.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Well, thank you guys very much for coming. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, so thanks for having us, and up on the screen right now is some of our contact information. If anybody thinks of another question that comes up later, feel free to reach out to either the DEC or the DOH.
Are we in the midst of a comment period right now? that with the deadline?
No,
No, we're not?
We are not.
Okay,
No, we actually closed that.
okay.
The other thing I would like, Greta, if you can send us a copy of the presentation, because once we close WebEx, it disappears.
we can do that.
Okay, if you can email it to the office, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for having
Have
us.
a good night.
Thanks for having us. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. So next up, we're going to follow up on the presentation that I missed from Kim and Sane Energy and come up with what a response that we can present to the full board in the way of maybe a letter or just a follow-up to the resolution that was passed by the board in February. And Kim had suggested a letter that she'd sent to me, and we can share it with everybody, a letter to de Blasio and also a letter to Commissioner Rhodes. And Kim, you can speak about this so much better than I can, so take it away. But you have to be unmuted there.
Sure. Yeah. So we have a couple of, and thank you all so much for inviting me here. I'm really curious about this National Grid presentation we just saw, so I might follow up with a couple of you about questions, but I didn't know if it was my place to ask. Yeah, so we are in the process, like National Grid is really moving full force ahead with the pipeline construction. And despite that, there's been no decisions made on their financial, recovery or approvals or things like that. So the rate case is going slower than the construction's going, which is odd because they need the rate case approval in order to keep proceeding with construction. So, I was down there today at the construction site on Montrose and Manhattan Avenue. It's just next to a school, and the kids were coming out of school today. It's a horror sight to see this happening. So we're really pushing full force to get a lot of, elected officials and people that have power in our city and our state to really ring alarm bells to our two main decision makers, which is, Governor Cuomo, who appoints John Rhodes, the head commissioner at the PSC, as Trina mentioned, and also Mayor de Blasio and his Department of Sustainability. They are parties to the rate case, and they have complete power to tell the DOT, do not issue any more street closure permits to them, to shut down construction in order to stand with us and shut down construction. I did draft 2 sample letters that you could use as templates, or you could copy and paste the whole thing or use parts of it, whatever you choose. And I sent those to Trina, one to de Blasio and one to John Rhodes, and the secretary, which processes all the letters for John Rhodes. And it would be good to copy the governor on that as well. So right now we have a really vibrant letter to de Blasio from the city council. We have a vibrant letter to Governor Cuomo and de Blasio from the assembly. And we're circulating now a letter from the Senate. And Lee and I just had a discussion with Congresswoman Velasquez's office on Friday. And we're going to work together with her ethics committee to see how we can sort of work on it from a federal level so she can reach out to Governor Cuomo. And Catherine and Lee and I have a meeting tomorrow with Steve Engelbright or his staff to try to I'm sorry, that's Friday, with Representative Maloney. We're meeting with her and her staff tomorrow to try to see if her and Nydia Velasquez can work together. We want to wrap this all up in a big media hit, like basically, hey, de Blasio, the community board says no, the city council says no, the assembly, the Senate, we even have federal, legislators saying no. Where are you in all of this? And he's come out last year as I'm a big, climate hero. So we want to really make sure that he walks the talk, and he has the power to pull some of these, street closure permits, and to say no to this pipeline. And just having the city erupt in this dissent against this project really sends a very clear message to the state. And that's, who we're also, trying to move along in this big game of chess to protect our health, safety, and democracy. So I'll stop there and see if you guys have any questions or.
Well, first, I'd just like to say what you and Lee and Catherine and your whole coalition is just remarkable. How just relentless and continual your, just the resistance to this, this infrastructure, just all the, like I say, the street theater going on. There's resistance, there's marches throughout the pipeline. It's really, hats off to you guys for, looking out for the community's best interest.
Thank you so much. Well, we're so grateful for you all, being really the first leaders in this and filing that first resolution. So that really helped to just plant that seed. So we're really, really grateful for your leadership as well.
And the letters that Kim has drafted are hearkening back to that resolution. They're basically reminding Rhodes and de Blasio of the resolution, and then with a further kind of update of where things are and why it's so important. And so I can share the letters with the committee. People can take a look at it, and then we can present them. If people have any tweaks, we can by email. Marie, does this work? Is this okay? And then we can present the letters to the board.
Can you maybe? I mean, is it possible just reel off the main points, just so? And I would just suggest maybe I know we have close to a quorum. Eric Swift joined us, just to make just a committee recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So dear Commissioner Rhodes, CB1 would like to follow up. It's easier for me to read it just because.
Okay.
So CB1 would like to follow up on our February 13th, 2020 letter to you that we have passed the resolution on February 11th, 2020 against National Grid's Metropolitan Reliability Infrastructure Project, which would include a new frac gas transmission pipeline through our district and an expansion on liquefied frac gas, LNG, on an already toxic site, the Newtown Creek, that the community is working to clean and protect the safety and health of an adjacent residential community. We urge you to deny National Grid's request for a rate hike in the current rate case proceeding under the regulatory oversight of the PSC. National Grid's current proposal requests hundreds of millions of dollars in customer rate hikes to expand and extend the life of the frac gas infrastructure, particularly $185 million to build community opposed pipeline in North Brooklyn and a $108.5 million liquefied natural gas, LNG vapors, and the LNG trucking at their Greenpoint Depot. The unnecessary expansion of their gas system has been proposed as alternatives to the Williams Northeast Supply Enhancement Project, which New York State denied, citing that the gas expansion went against the climate leadership and Community Protection Act. We would like to amplify the concerns of thousands of Brooklyners who have submitted public comments opposing National Grid's proposal to raise rates to build the Metropolitan Reliability Infrastructure Pipeline and other frac gas infrastructure in both this proceeding and case 19G0678. The MRI pipeline, known locally as the North Brooklyn Pipeline, is being built predominantly through Black, brown, and working class neighborhoods without community consent. These communities have suffered for decades from the health impacts of environmental racism and injustice. During a health and economic crisis, Brooklyners deserve to know what their hard-earned ratepayer dollars are being used toward our clean energy goals and not used to continue a polluted racist legacy. Frack gas has been linked to an increase in indoor air pollution and endangers the health of New Yorkers, especially during a pandemic affecting the respiratory system. Additionally, we must address that in order to be in compliance with New York City and state climate laws, we must drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions over the next 10 years. National Grid's proposal to invest hundreds of millions of ratepayer dollars over the next 3 years to expand and extend the life of frack gas infrastructure takes us in the wrong direction. During this rate case proceeding, New York State Department of Public Service has questioned the need for a phase 5 of the MRI pipeline, and the community has opposed the entire project from Brownsville to Greenpoint. National Grid has ignored the massive community and ratepayer opposition to these projects and has continued construction on the MRI pipeline despite not having rate recovery approval for work done in 2020. The health of Brooklyn communities and the future health of the planet must come before National Grid's profits. And instead, I have concern that ratepayer dollars are about to be invested in infrastructure that there's question over the need of in the system that is transitioning to renewables and will likely become stranded assets as climate laws are implemented. Please listen to the thousands of comments that have been submitted by the hardworking Brooklyn residents who want safe, renewable energy and reject National Grid's rate hike requests for the MRI pipeline and other frack gas infrastructure. So Kim, thank you for that.
That's really great. There's this one edit I would suggest in one of those final paragraphs. It said I
just switched it to we. I was reading along in the Google Doc. It's
Yeah.
I know, Kim, you can read the next one because your words come better out of your mouth.
The one to de Blasio is just pretty much the same language, and then just saying just highlighting that the community board has passed a resolution. But I don't know, Trina, if you want to read it, feel free.
Or Kim, do you want to read it? I read this one. You read the next.
Right. So the first one is going to John Rhodes. Is that correct?
With a copy to Cuomo, you said.
Yeah, it would be good for a copy to Cuomo. So yeah, the Mayor de Blasio one is just Mayor de Blasio. Community Board one of Brooklyn would like to highlight that we have passed a resolution on February 11, 2020 against National Grid's Metropolitan Reliability Infrastructure Project, and would include a new fracked gas transmission pipeline through our district, blah, blah, blah. You guys know the drill. We stand with thousands of Brooklyners, blah, blah, blah. MRI is known as the North Brooklyn Pipeline. During a health and economic crisis, Brooklyners deserve to know that their hard-earned ratepayer dollars are being used towards our clean energy goals, and not a continued polluted racist legacy. That was included in the other letter. And then this is something specific. Additionally, we must address that in order to be in compliance with New York City and state climate laws, we must dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions over the next 10 years. 3 years is 1/3, and then how they want to propose this for the next 3 years. 3 years is 1/3 of the way to our targeted goals of our climate law, and let me change that, Trina, don't see how we are going to meet them at this rate if we're still building new infrastructure this late in the game. National Grid has ignored the massive community and ratepayer opposition to these projects and has continued construction on the MRI pipeline despite not having rate recovery approval done in 2020. And we are asking that the City of New York revoke any permits already granted to National Grid for the MRI pipeline and immediately halt construction. We also request that the City of New York deny any permits needed by National Grid to expand their Greenpoint LNG depot and any permits and variances for National Grid's plans for LNG trucking on New York City streets, which is currently illegal. The executive order you signed on February 6th of this year commits to ending the expansion of fossil fuel-related infrastructure, saying, quote, to ensure that the city's ambitious emissions goals are achieved, the city will not approve the addition of infrastructure within its energy shed, and that expands the supply of fossil fuels via pipelines or terminals for the transfer of fossil fuels via the construction of new fossil fuel-based electric generation capacity. The people of North Brooklyn and ratepayers across our borough need that commitment fulfilled today, please revoke any permits for these projects and use the city's position in this rate case to oppose any rate hike for fossil fuel infrastructure.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Hey, has phase 5 construction started on the pipeline?
Well, they've been edging their way into phase 5. We have made a very big stink about it inside the rate case. And I think that if we weren't in the rate case, they would probably be really close to finishing. I mean, they're just plowing ahead. Because we're in confidential negotiations with them, there's things that like I'm not allowed to disclose or else I'll get kicked out of the rate case. But I know that what it appears to me when I'm standing on the street today, it appears to me that they are trying to connect phase 4, which they still didn't have rate recovery approval for yet, but they have gone all the way up to Montrose and Meserole Street, and they look like they are trying to connect into their old distribution pipeline that goes sort of like around and like up Leonard Street, and then also plugs into the LNG depot. So I think they're trying to do a workaround if they lose because of our resistance.
Well,
So they can hook up to an existing pipeline and get the gas through.
Right, but that will slow them down significantly because that old pipeline is old, number one, and number two, it's not as big as the one that the MRI is. That's new pipeline that they're trying to build. So we've done a good job so far. And like, you know, Willis and Lisa have both been in the rate case. That's been awesome. We got the New York City Comptroller's office to join the rate case. You know, so we're in Catherine and Margot and Benny and all these great,
It's amazing the team you have. It's incredible.
Just remarkable. And we just like having all these new folks join in. I think National Grid was like, oh, here come the people. Oh no.
Yeah. So I just think, you know, we, you know, the board, as is mentioned in the letter, and obviously where we think the board unanimously, you know, approved the resolution that we sent early in the year. And I feel like, you know, National Grid's plowing ahead as much as they can. And I feel like these two letters are really important to continue the board, to further the board's position on this infrastructure that's unneeded, and I feel like it's harmful. You know, it's the opposite. How do you guys feel? I know, Willis, you're in the coalition, but.
I think, Kim, one question. Does it make sense for the community board to directly ask National Grid the status of phase 5 versus phase 4 and try to pinpoint them to say exactly what they're doing? Not that they'll answer directly, but at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think that helps. What do you think, Willis? I mean, I think that could be.
Well, they did send us a notice, I say like 2 months ago, that they're continuing construction. They use this vague term, I'm trying to remember what it was, that everything they plan to do, they plan to get online this fall or this winter. And they wouldn't really say whether that included phase 5 or will they do it with or without the rate hike. It may be worth.
Yeah. I don't know how much info we'll get out of them by asking, but I mean, definitely supportive of sending these letters, and you know, as much as we can utilize CB1 and you know, just try to put more pressure on the governor and the mayor's office.
Cool.
Should we make a motion to present the letters as written to the full board at the
Can,
next week?
Trina?
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't have a quorum.
I know,
So,
but no one ever has a quorum, but we can
no, but
make
there
the
is a
motion.
process when you don't have a quorum, which is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to explain right now.
Okay.
Is that the committee members present can make a recommendation that you presented to the full board,
Oh, you're right.
because it's not, you're not going to have a vote of the committee.
Okay.
All right, so you're going to follow that process if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Right.
we've got,
And then can the letters be submitted to the full board ahead of the meeting so that everyone has them
It's up to
in
Trina
front of
if
them?
she prepares a report.
Okay.
yeah, we'll include those, and we'll include a copy of our original resolution too. The two letters, because Kim, when the letters go to these people, that we should include the resolution, copy of the resolution.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Show off what the awesome work is that you're doing, you know. Does CB1 have like social media or anything like that? Do you guys ever blast out like, cool, look at what we did in our meeting tonight or anything?
Other than just each committee submits the report and then it's included in the minutes of the full board meeting. And then that's posted to the website. But no, I personally wish the board was more prolific with putting stuff out there through e-blasts or social media.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Okay, well, we'll have Sane Energy and the No MBK pipeline. Like, you know, if you guys put, you know, minutes or video or whatever up or accomplish anything, we'll brag about you guys.
We're going to accomplish this, Kim. We're going to get it done.
So I make a motion that Trina present these two letters to the board for approval and for send from the board. I don't know if yeah.
Super.
Second.
Eric, do you agree? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
So we've got to vote. Gina,
We vote.
all in favor?
What is quorum for you all?
5, I think.
5. Okay.
We're close.
Yeah.
But we're not there. That's great. So Kim, well, I'll send you a copy of the, or you can see a copy of the committee report
Fabulous.
once it's ready. And then the board meeting will be next week, and we'll report back to you with what happens.
Super exciting. Are you guys doing it in person or are you still using WebEx for the big meeting?
WebEx.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll
Yeah.
come as an attendee and cheer you guys on in the background.
All right. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for all you do.
So much.
You're so awesome. Yeah.
You're so awesome. Thanks again.
Trina, I have an old business item.
Okay.
Yeah, just, the board was notified that the DEC has extended the comment period for 34 Berry's remediation proposal.
Right.
So I'm going to put it in the chat, but if we could include it in the report, just to the board, that it's been extended to November 7th. And I can forward you the committee got a notice about it. But here,
Do we want to recommend, I know that one of the things, I wasn't at the meeting, but what was reported in your very thorough, great committee report was that Laura Hoffman had thought that we should have a health study needs to be done with regards to 34 Berry. Is that something we could recommend? I mean, should we draft some sort of a comments to
yeah, we could ask to the Department of Health that they do a thorough study of the building and I don't know what the right wording would be for something like that. Or that could be our comment to DEC, is that the DEC and through DOH perform a health study of the impacts of the contamination and remediation of the building.
Okay.
Something like that.
Does that seem right, Eric and Willis?
Sure.
Okay. And again, we don't have our quorum, so we can, the
Well,
committee
make a-
members present will have recommended that comments be sent to DOH requesting the health.
So I just want to do I can make a motion to do that, and
Okay, I'll second.
can the chair second?
Can the chair second? I don't know.
I guess so, why not?
So all in favor?
Aye.
Great. I think we're good. Does anyone else have? I know that I talked to Janie Poole this week, and she talked about what North Brooklyn Neighbors is just there's air quality studies that they've gotten the backing of I think NYU they're collaborating with NYU, and they're implementing some of it. And Janie had thought it might make sense for someone from North Brooklyn Neighbors to come and report to the committee next month, and maybe even do a presentation to the full board at
Sounds great.
the
Yeah.
November meeting. But I guess they have to come to the committee first. How does that work? Can they just request to go to the full board? Because they're not requesting anything that would be voted on.
Marie?
I'm trying to figure out where you're going with that. They want to make a presentation?
I think so. The project is started, and they want to let the community know that the project is ongoing and sort of what the project consists of.
I'm sorry, which project is this? Is this the
This
one
is
that
an
you were
air
doing
quality monitoring being done by North Brooklyn Neighbors.
for which area of Greenpoint?
I think I don't know.
It's
I know
spread
that
throughout the
there's-
district.
I'm sorry?
It's spread throughout the district. I think they're doing monitoring at different locations.
Okay. So what they can do is they can ask to do a presentation, and the chair could receive that request,
Okay.
and she could, but I don't know, what she would do, but she could refer it to the committee. So so you officially get it to do a presentation before the committee. So she can contact the chair through a letter, and then do it that way.
Okay. I mean, they can come to the committee, but I think the bigger impact for them would be to bring it to the full board, to do the presentation to the full board, but maybe they have to come to the committee first.
It's
It's
not
the chair.
it's not my call.
Okay. Okay, anybody, anything else?
Nope.
Shall we say good night?
Good night. Good meeting. All right.
Thanks,
Trina.
everybody.
Thanks,
All right,
Steve.
thanks, Trina. Thanks,
Bye,
Marie.
everybody.
All right.
Thank you, Marie.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night. Bye.